Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast. Welcome to today's podcast. Callan's just come in to say hello, so we'll see what antics he can get up to. Yep, he's off to find whatever he can find.
Something noisy, no doubt.
I think we both kind of came up with this talk because we were talking about it a bit. And it was that idea of people live their lives by their own perception. So it's the idea that you see it's a quote, you know absolutely nothing of other people's lives and their inner struggles.
Yeah.
And so, judging them or anything like that, you can't do because you don't know what it's like to be them.
Yes.
And then in that, with their own fears and desires, it's hard to it's like with their past and with their fears and their desires that have built on that, then their perception of their reality is different from our perception. So it's where you can come to the same situation and it can be completely different for two different people.
The perception thing's an interesting one because when you start thinking about that and about how other people see the same thing you see, it's crazy.
Yeah, and there was that bit as well that I found from my book, which was we all think about the world and our place in it. And the way we think about it is influenced by our past. So it's almost like everyone's point of view and perspective is different. So therefore, because we're talking about it on the lines of, when you meet someone that you have a struggle with, in whatever way, or you struggle to understand, or you almost feel like judging them because you can't understand why they're behaving like they're behaving. It's like how enlightening and important it is to take things from a higher perspective that isn't necessarily fully yours.
Yes. To
really almost look at it from their point of view, or at least from a different perspective of how they could be feeling, and show them compassion, even when it feels hard to.
Even just being aware that there's a different perspective than your own. Yeah, not to get all high and mighty and be like, my way or the highway. Yeah,
that's it, because there is not be understanding,
There's some situations that you and I come across in life that you react to and perceive and feel differently about than I do, and like polarly different, complete opposites. And, I and you need to be aware that some people, that each other don't come into the same situation with the same thoughts and emotions and feelings. And
it's usually it kind of knocks you sideways. You're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that, because there's the other thing is like the triggers, certain things can trigger people and they don't even know they're triggered, or you could be surprised you're triggered, or it can make you feel in a way that you can't understand, and sometimes it can make you emotional in a different way. And and like you said, the same situation, you can have a different reaction, a different feeling to it.
And that it's very hard, and certainly I have to constantly remind myself that people don't see things the way I see them. Because sometimes you think, you'll meet someone or you'll have an interaction with someone and you'll be frustrated at the way they're behaving. But if you take a minute, there's a reason they're behaving the way they are. And whether it's this situation, whether it's something that's happened, they're not doing it to frustrate you. It's a bit like you say it all the time with the dogs. The dogs aren't trying to annoy you.
No, they're not doing it on purpose. It's like,
I'm pretty sure they are.
And then we go back to that thing, that Wayne Dyer, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. So, if you're finding that people are frustrating you more in your life, that's
there's maybe a frustration within you.
Yeah, that's like your frustration within you being reflected back.
But even the things that they're doing might be negative or unhelpful things that they're doing or saying, but that's not coming from a negative or unhelpful. Like they're not trying to be,
or
that's just where they are.
And it's also that thing, you control how you feel. So if someone's behaviour is making you feel a certain way, like we just said with the dogs, it's like understanding that they're not trying to make you feel that way. And if they are, they are. But you can also not feel that way. Yeah. That's a choice too.
That's it. And it starts to spiral, because then when you think about other people's perspectives and how they're perceiving a situation in their past that has led them to feel that way about everything, or even the programming they have in their subconscious that has led them into what they're doing, then you start to realize that, like people who steal stuff, well, there's probably a deep-rooted reason that they do it. They're not really doing it specifically to you.
It's like that whole thing, is there such a thing as a bad person?
Yeah.
Or is it just the way that
I think bad people get created. Bad is a odd word.
I know. But it's a very simple... I'm just trying to make it black and white.
Bad people, I think, get created.
Yes, by their past and whatever's happened to them.
I think there is such a thing as a bad person.
Yeah.
But I think that person didn't start out bad.
Yeah.
They were shaped.
But do you think underneath it all, they're not at all bad and they're just working from what's shaped?
Yes.
So
I think they're a blank canvas.
There's not really
a bad person.
It's just what their life has led them to.
Yeah. Yeah. And once they get so far down that path, while I'm not saying it's impossible, the turnaround can be very difficult. It's like
squeaky time.
Squeaky toy time. Now is the Callan segment.
What did you want to say about bad people?
There's no such thing as bad dogs.
No bad dogs. All dogs are good.
What was I saying?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Squeak.
And he's not doing it to annoy you.
No? Are you sure?
No, he's too cute.
So we were talking about bad people.
Yes, and turning it around.
So I think that everyone could be turned around, but it's like dopamine and that sort of thing, that people engage in non-helpful behaviors such as the doom scrolling, because you get a dopamine hit from it, and then it becomes a bit of an addiction, and then when you're feeling unfulfilled or unhappy and you don't think, I need that dopamine fix, but something's missing, you go back to the scrolling because it kind of fills that.
It's that whole thing, you're filling a hole. And it's just that it's not always the right way to
and you've programmed yourself to fill it that way. So I think it's the same with quotation bad people, is that if you've programmed yourself to fill that hole and that void and cope with life in that manner, to break out of it's a very difficult thing. Yeah. And I know for myself, like I filled a void with unhelpful behaviors, and it was hard, and it is hard to this day not to fall back into that unhelpful behavior. Yeah. Yeah. That got into a whole different thing.
No, it didn't. It followed on organically, and that's where we ended up. So and I think something that I find harder now, that I truly am aware that everyone has their own perspective on life and how they're behaving and how they're being, is they're not always out to hurt you or be mean to you, even though it can feel like that. And in that comes that compassion. And then sometimes I hate the fact that I'm so compassionate. Like, that can be really hard, because I want to be angry and upset. But really, I'm just like, oh no, well, I can see why that's happened like that, or why they're being like that. And that's okay. Well, so much love to them, because they're having their own struggles. And that's
they're
why
having such a hard time.
Yeah. It's like it's not even being the bigger person. It's just about opening your heart and being the compassionate person.
Honestly, it's just about being aware.
Yeah.
But, and it's that thing. It's hard to then be angry at groups of people, because it's like, well, obviously they've got a problem somewhere, or something's not right in their life, or unhelpful beliefs, whatever it is, that are causing them to act that way. Some way they're not being fulfilled. Yeah. But in the moment, it can be hard to think about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because especially when it just feels so different to the way your life is, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, this isn't even the important part about life, but you're really hung up on it. Okay, well,
That's it. But equally, I don't think it's probably a good idea to point out.
Oh no. Well, you don't do that, do you? And like sometimes the hardest thing is not to judge, like because we judge from our perspective. Well, how could you be thinking like that? And it's like, no, that's not my place to judge people. That's not fair or right. They are just working their way through their journey at their pace and how they do it, and it's not my place to judge where they're at or what they're doing.
It makes me think of when we've worked together, that you and I would come to a problem and we would have very different ideas on how to solve the problem. And it's that thing that it's not that my way is right and your way is wrong.
No.
It's that there's different ways to do it.
And it's, to put like perspectives then and real easy there is I'm never as strong as you.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah, that's a good... Yeah.
So when we came to a situation, my way of looking at it and working my way through it was, right, how can we use the tools, the lay of the land or whatever to make this easier on the fact that I'm not as strong as I would, I could be to deal with this. Whereas you come in with the brawn and you're just like,
here,
we'll just lift it. Oh gosh, my back's awfully sore. And I'm like, well, I could have, but that's just like our different perspectives of coming in at something. Are you going to whistle instead of squeaking your toy now? I'm sorry, I stole it from you. Calvin's upset I stole his toy.
What's his perspective on it?
Mummy's mean. Am I mean? No.
But yeah, that is it's the difficult thing, is to remember that other people have different perceptions of the world.
Yeah.
I got into a really crazy thought about this a while back. I don't know if I've mentioned it before. But it's like, so the sky's blue, yeah? Or some days it's blue.
Oh, I've heard this before.
But how do you know what I see and what you see? It's like someone who's colorblind. Like my brother's colorblind, and we noticed it because he drew a picture and the grass was brown. But when he looks outside at the grass, he's told that's green, but he sees brown.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you start getting into that, it gets real trippy. And then it gets even more out there the further you go down the...
Well, it's like, and then you really get into everyone's perspective is different and you do see everything. Like, someone can look at the same photograph, let's say, of you or something, and see... Different things. And it's just kind of coming from your different perspectives.
Definitely. And... it's the same with like a piece of art or something like that. Some people see a piece of art and think it's great, and other people think it's rubbish.
But then we get into the whole, this is why people judge and can't let things go, isn't it? Because this is what happens now on the internet, is that my opinion about this is right, and I must...
The internet's a terrible thing because it's anonymous.
But it's not.
But so that you can... say things and you feel like there's no one on the other side.
Yeah.
So people are, which is kind of an odd judge on society, that people are inherently slightly worse on the internet than they would be in real life. But,
well, are they, or is it just you see more of them because you don't see all those people in real life? There's just more.
I don't know. Maybe.
Contact on the internet. This is the thing,
and
they always stand out.
Going along with the other people's point of view, it's like if someone likes some music that you don't like, well, it doesn't mean that they're wrong.
Yeah.
And it's the same if someone comes into a situation and doesn't like the situation, but you like the situation, well, it doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just their different perspective.
It's that whole thing. We are all different individuals, and not everything's the same for every one of us, and that's something that people really struggle with. And I think that really, it's just making me think of my dad needing to lower his cholesterol.
Yeah.
And he cut out butter and cheese and a load of other things, I think.
A load of the nice things.
Probably sugar and things like that. Things that were really not helping his cholesterol. And he lost loads of weight and his cholesterol came down. Fantastic. My mum started getting high cholesterol.
Yeah.
She's on the same diet as my dad because they eat the same things. Doesn't work for her.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, that's just proof of the individual body and what they need. And, I think that sometimes we lose that. So we are connected and everything's all connected, but we're all individuals and we all have like different things that fuel the way we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's where humanity has lost some of its connection to our own self.
Yes.
And our own intuition into what we need and what may work for us.
Yeah.
And obviously with health things, a lot of them, it's like big flashy adverts of this will work for you, and
yes.
It's very easy to get drawn in by the success stories, but probably for the same amount of success stories is the same amount of people that have gone, no, it didn't work for me.
Yep. And I think you probably fall into, especially when you get to that sort of health side of things, problems in that, I mean, I'm not a trained doctor, but
don't know. I know nothing. I'm not the healthiest being.
Training of doctors seems to be very much on sort of ABC, A is wrong with them, you give them B, C is your outcome. This gives that. This, it's like...
But I wasn't even talking about doctors necessarily there. Like these supplement-based
it's the same thing.
Help,
it's healthcare, health things, healthy things, diets.
But it's like, that's something we get to remember, is that we're all individual. And I think, I always say this with people when I work with their animals as well, is I will never know their animal as well as they will.
Yep.
And so as far as making decisions and feeling into what's right for their animal, that's their job. That's up to them because they are the closest connected. So as far as me giving them advice or vets or trainers or whatever, it's up to them to really feel into what feels right. In the same way when we're doing it for ourselves, it's up to us to really feel into it. And I think sometimes we can become disempowered by like feeling like some people have authority over us because they're better educated about us.
Yes.
But let's face it.
No one is.
No one is as educated about us than us because we've lived with ourselves, Yes, they know how, in general, how the human body, for instance, works better, or the human mind, or, they have been fully trained in that in a full capacity. But when it comes down to it, we have a sense more of our individual self.
Yes. I think you've hit on something quite interesting there, because I think part of that is probably the reason that people's intuition, that natural gut feeling, isn't as good, is because they are told this is what's right for you. They may be thinking, I don't think this is what's right for me, but they're, no, this is what's right. Oh, I must be wrong. That's what, someone in authority, a peer, has told me this is what I should be feeling. So...
And it's only when you've come across then people that have, like people in authority, they've given you bad advice or have told you things that aren't true, that you really start to then question people in authority. Not just people in authority, but everyone. But it's like something about people who in authority is like people who have been more educated than what you, and so you put more trust in them because you think, well, you're bound to know better than myself.
Yep.
But it's clear to me, I've certainly come across it, and I have that greater feeling of, I'm going to question everything you say, and I'm going to feel into it, and question it not as in why, how dare you tell me this? I mean more like, okay, well, how do I feel about what I'm being told here? Yeah,
that's it. That's like when I learn something new, I don't like being told that's because because it's like that. Yeah. And that's the way it is. But I prefer to be told why it's like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a better way of learning, because if you know why, then you're able to apply it.
Yes.
If you're just taught that this is fact, then you can't apply the fact, because it just doesn't work that way. And that's something as well, I think, I don't know if it's an age thing or just what we've experienced together in our lives, is that something I've definitely learned is for learning why is so important.
Yeah. So I like that about physics at school.
Yeah.
Because physics is why things happen.
And it is applied physics. Yeah, but I don't know about you, but it was like applied physics. You know, it really is like it's applied in day-to-day life.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 It is just that knowing
Whereas
why things.
maths,
Maths is physics without a purpose.
yeah, maths, I never got it, and I think it was because there was no story.
Yeah.
We go on about stories, but there was no story, no reasoning into why.
I just found maths very dull.
And then, you know, well, I struggle more with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I get overwhelmed by them, would be the sense. But if I understand the purpose behind the numbers, I can figure it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an interesting segue.
It was interesting, but it's slightly off of what we were
it's not.
talking
It's
about.
not. It's still, like, I think we're just hitting on things that we've noticed that change our perspective or make us think about our perspective on.
I mean, the one that always gets me is where you see someone you know walking down the other side of the street and you give them a big smile and a wave and they completely ignore you. And you think, what? That's really mean. Like, they didn't even smile, they didn't wave. Like, how could they do that to me? Horrible people. But the other person walking down the other side of the street maybe just had a really big fight with their partner or something like that and is really worried about losing their job, or, you know, things are just going really bad. And they didn't even recognize that you were walking on the other side of the street shouting and saying hi, you know? And it takes, like I say, it's not the bigger person, it's the perspective, the ability to see past how you felt about it.
It takes a breath.
Yeah.
I think, you know, sometimes we have that instant sort of reaction of, oh, that hurt.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
why?
Why? Yeah, you know, just like take that breath and be like, you know, and quite often what any person needs when they are reacting in such a way that you weren't expecting is like, are you okay?
Well, that's the end of the story, is that rather than being annoyed at them and then not speaking to them, going around and saying, is everything okay? Like, that would change not only how you felt about the interaction, but how they felt about the interaction and hopefully help out their whatever was going wrong.
Well, it's just by, being there to listen sometimes, you know. Sometimes people just need to talk and then like, hey, you know what? It was just good to talk about it. I feel better. And actually it doesn't seem as bad as it was, you know. You can get lost in your own head with what you perceive as being the biggest struggle of your life, and actually it's not as big as it seemed when it's out there in the world.
Yeah. But it's hard sometimes, especially when it's friends or people you know, it's hard to take the emotion out of it and be able to look at their perspective.
I never like to take the emotion out of anything.
I feel like
but I know what you mean. It's like step aside from the emotion and just
that instant
reaction.
gut reaction of emotion. To take that away and then say, well, hang on.
Well, that's that's something that I always say to people with their animals.
Yeah.
Is when we react to the behaviour, we tend to come back with the same sort of energy that they're giving off, which isn't helpful.
Yeah.
So if they're feeling fearful, we'll get fearful. If they're angry, we get angry, you know. Yeah. And what I always suggest is respond. And with respond, you take that breath, and the response tends to be without the emotion of however the animal's.
Yes.
Because you take a minute to think, to feel, to just, okay, now we can deal with it.
That's it. That lets you get past they're not doing it to annoy you.
Yeah, that's it. That's totally it. You know, when they're going ape at something outside and, you know, and you're losing control of them, it just feels like your whole world's crumbling down around you. It's just like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with the situation? If you're like, why are you stop being so annoying? Like that, they just, you know, especially with dogs, they think you're just shouting with them.
Yes,
so
you're joining.
We're just escalating
and obviously
it.
You're very anxious and worked up about something. So I really should be anxious and worked up about this thing.
Whereas if you take a breath, you're like, hey, come on.
Yeah.
That's enough.
We don't need to deal with that.
Yeah. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to break the habit of reacting in emotion to every situation. And I think that's something we can all practice, is like when you feel the emotions bubbling up. I'm not saying suppress emotions. I'm just saying take a breath and just be like, whew, that's interesting, that's coming up. Yeah. Right. Well, let's deal with the situation and just make sure we let them go as well. Because, you can't be like, well, let's just stamp down the anger at this, because that's going to come back up at another situation where you're not expecting it, and that's never fun.
Exactly. It's that thing. It's the being aware of them, but not letting them do the driving.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was really interesting. I think
if everyone could take a moment to see
take a breath.
Other people's perspectives on life, there'd be a lot less arguments in the world.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, take a breath. Don't be so fast. You don't always have to react so fast. In fact, reacting fast is never usually the answer on that. I've noticed that taking that moment in time to just assess or be aware and then respond, changes everything. But it sometimes the emotions can hit you like a bomb. They really, so it can be really hard to just be like, oh, okay. Sometimes you need several breaths, as long as it's not like an urgent situation. It's several breaths to get to the point where you're like, and now I can respond in a way that I would like to.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah. Good topic.
It is. Interesting.
Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you.